Hi, everyone, and welcome back to That's It. So, the Menendez brothers could be free. What are you talking about, Cheryl? Meaning that they could be free, be released from prison after spending over a decade in prison, killing their parents in 1989 in their Beverly Hills mansion home. Yes, so apparently this past Tuesday, that the judge, Michael Jesic, have resentenced them, meaning that they could be, no, not could be, it's a possibility there are possibility for parole. Yes, after serving a lifetime in prison for killing their parents. Now, this is huge for their case because I know they've been like fighting and trying to do appeals after appeals, trying to be released um, from prison. So I just want to give you a rundown story about the Menendez brothers. If anyone don't know, I know a lot of people may have watched the Netflix series and documentary about the Menendez brothers behind the whole sexually abuse by their father Jose Menendez and their mother Kitty Menendez, who knew about it and didn't say anything. So apparently they were sexually abused as a child by their father, and the father, Jose Menendez, was a president or worked at a record company, and apparently he was abusing his sons for a very long time, and no one ever talked about it back in those days. This was like in the 80s and 90s. It was very taboo, and if things did happen in the family, in the household, it was very hush hush. You couldn't mention it to anyone. Excuse me. So the Menendez brothers were serving a life sentence without a possibility of parole because that murder in 1989 was very brutal, you guys. Brutal, horrendous. It was just awful. Like just the blood scenes and just the way that they killed their parents. And you can definitely look it up on the internet. It was just horrible. And so yeah, they were serving a lifetime sentence in prison with no possibility of parole because they ended their parents' life so brutally and it just killed them like just like that, and try to blame it on their homes were broken into. It was they got robbed, and they were trying to make an alibi for themselves, and they were together. This whole big mess. So you definitely have to watch the documentary and the series of it. It would explain everything. I'm just giving you a little bits and pieces of it. So according to Erik and Lyle, they went through the trial and everything, and obviously their peers sentenced them to of murder, and I feel like there was no accountability. There was no apology about it. The only thing that I mentioned that they were abused by their father, and no one in a few family members knew about it, but they couldn't say anything because they were very afraid of Jose and of his just the way that he has done things in the past, how he was very controlling, very manipulative, just very not a nice man. And the mother who knew about it didn't really say anything because I feel like at that time she didn't really care. She just wanted to support her husband and be there for her husband, even though she knew in the back of her mind that this was wrong, that her own husband was hurting her own children, and she just sat back and did nothing, and she was just as guilty. Now, with that being said, I'm not condoning what the men did to their parents because I don't condone violence at all. I feel like there's other ways to deal with pain instead of inflicting hurt on someone else. There's other ways to resolve this when you're being hurt in your own home by your own family members, by your own parents that who's supposed to love you and protect you and keep you from harm's way, and they got the total opposite. The Menendez brothers at the time, and who can they run to? Who can they talk to? I know one of the brothers wrote a letter to one of their cousins explaining that they were sexually abused by their father, and that was it. They couldn't even tell an adult because they were so afraid of their father's reaction and what the father would do because he was a very terrifying man. And like I said, that was very taboo, especially with boys. Like that was not like a thing. You know, in their world back in those days when a lot of, majority of young boys and young girls get molested by a family member. So it was not very common back in those days, especially when it came to boys, because even the defense team was like saying they got molested, they're boys. Like it was like a shock to them. I'm like, yeah, boys can be molested too. Like how ignorant are you? That's what I was saying when I was watching the trial and that comment that they made. I'm like, boys get molested too. Girls, majority of the time, but boys too. So like I said, it was very taboo that they couldn't talk about it. Like it was just not a thing for them in their world, because they had, and it, when it did happen, it was very hush hush, kept in the family. It was not to be talked about or mentioned whatsoever. So this past Tuesday, the judge, like I said, Michael Jesic, he resentenced them for 50 years, which that means that they are eligible for a parole. Yes, they are eligible for parole. And I did a video last year, thought that they were guilty at first because after, reading the reports and seeing the images of what these men did to their parents, I'm like, these are evil men. They're disgusting. Like I didn't get the full story why they did it. I just thought they were terrible human beings and they deserved to rot in prison because they were spending money after their parents were dead. They didn't look like two sad boys that their parents were brutally murdered. They didn't act the part. They just act like they were just living their best life now that they had their daddy's money and just spending it like crazy instead of like a grieving sons who lost their parents. And it would just seem like, in my eye at the time, the two spoiled rich kid who got whatever they want because their father was going to disown them with their heritage, their money. And then reading everything and then going deeper of like why they did it. We know that they did it, but why? What possessed them to kill their parents the way that they did, especially those graphic pictures and everything. And then that's when the boys explained they were sexually abused by their father. Now, do I condone this? Like I said, absolutely not. There's other ways, to talk, to get help. But like I said, back in those days, very taboo. You couldn't talk about it. You couldn't mention it at all. It was just like hush hush in a household. So this past Tuesday, the Menendez brothers share emotional testimony to the judge, and obviously they didn't go to LA for the hearing. They had to do it through Zoom in the San Diego prison. So this is what Erik and Lyle had to say to the judge before the judge made his decision of the, resentencing of 50 years. So I'm just going to read to you what the judge and what the Menendez brothers had to say. So the Menendez brothers shared emotional testimony on Tuesday, admitting full responsibility of their parents' murder, following a bombshell decision by the Los Angeles County Supervisor Court Judge Michael Jesic to resentence their original term. Each brother spoke for 10 minutes and offered a full admission of their crimes. Lyle Menendez spoke first and took responsibility for the cold-blooded killing of his parents, Jose and Kitty Menendez, in their Beverly Hills mansion in 1989. I take full responsibility. I killed my parents. I made that choice to kill my mom and dad in their own home, Lyle Menendez said. I made that choice to make a mockery of the justice system. I offer no excuse and I don't blame my parents, he said. I was impulsive and immature and I bottled up my own emotions and anger. I was scared but also filled with rage, he continued. Had I the coping skills and trust others, I would have done this. Even after I killed him, Jose, meaning, I still hear his voice. I'm deeply ashamed for what I did, he said. Now, Erik spoke, and then he said, I have profound sorrow for the tragedy I created, he said. I took the lives of my mom and my dad. My actions were criminal, cruel, and cowardly. I have no excuse or justification for what I did, and I was the one who convinced Lyle we couldn't escape. Erik then admitted to reloading the shotgun after shooting both his parents inside their Beverly Hills mansion in 1989, running outside to reload the gunshot to finish the job on his mom. He also admitted to lying and creating both his and Lyle's alibi after the murder. I had fired all 5 rounds at my parents and went back to reload. I lied to the police, I lied to my family, and I'm truly sorry, he said. Continuing on, and then Erik said, this crime shouldn't have never happened. I know my parents should be alive and aren't because of me, he continued. Erik then went on and reflected on what he has felt since the fatal night decades ago. I imagine what I felt like. I tried to understand the fear they felt. I imagine their last moments over and over. I am deeply responsible for it all, he said. My actions was criminal, selfish, and cowardly. I take full responsibility. I am truly sorry. My parents should be alive. They can never be fully healed for my crimes, and he continued. So I believe that these men were really sorry, really were sincere, and they actually took full responsibility of ending their parents' life. Now, a lot of people are going to say, well, they just said all this so they can be released sooner instead of spending their dying days in prison. That's a possibility too. We're not in their heads. So I'm going to take a leap of faith and believe that these men are very sincere for taking their parents' life. Now, it's a possibility that they're saying what the judge want to hear, and the judge did grant them, resentence them 50 years, and now they have a possibility of parole. Now, for this to go quicker and sooner, so they can be released, because they may be released this year in November of 2025. But the one man that have the power to give them clemency is Governor Gavin Newsom. He has the power to do that. Will he do that? Because I know he's trying to run for president, which most likely that's not going to happen. But we're not going to talk about that. That's a different conversation that we're going to have. But he has the power to do that. He really does. And we're just going to see. Time will tell. And once I feel like if you've been reformed and you're really sorry and you repent for your sin that they have done, why not? Why they can't get a second chance? What about Gypsy Rose? She killed her parents. She killed her mother, and now she's living her life, married, have a kid. Why they can't do the same thing? They already served their time. They served a decades in prison for killing their parents. Now they are remorseful and they're sorry, but back then there wasn't. They was trying to get away with it, and then they didn't mention to anyone why they really did it. But now they really come full circles and realize they were wrong. They were guilty. They should have not killed their parents. They should have done things very differently. Yes, they should have, but you know what? We're here now. And now they're taking accountability of what they've done. And they should be released. I feel like if they're changed and they've been reformed, they should be released. They should get a second chance. Why not? Why should they rot in prison for the rest of their life when they took full accountability? They served their time, so they should be free. And I know a lot of people are not going to agree with me. I know a lot of people are not going to be happy that they're going to be released because it's California, and then how some people say California is very corrupt. The whole justice system, every justice system, certain justice systems are corrupt. You know what I mean? It just can't be. It's not only just California; it's other areas too, in my opinion. But you know what? I feel like they should be released. They should be with their family and their friends. I feel like it's time, and we shouldn't hold certain things against people. That's one thing. If there wasn't reform and if there wasn't sorry and there was no guilt, no accountability, yeah, they should stay in prison. They should rot until they're dead. But they are very sorry and they're very remorseful, and I believe in my heart of heart they deserve a second chance and they should be released. Now, like I said, I don't condone what they did back in 1989. I really don't. I feel like they should have done things differently. But now time has changed. Now that when people are being sexually assaulted or abused by family members, people speak up now. People tell other people. It's not like it's just hush hush or it's just not taboo because a young boy is being sexually assaulted or abused by a family member. Now a lot of kids are speaking up. A lot of parents are educating their children that if you feel like someone is touching you inappropriately at school or home or a family member, come to me, tell me. And it's very important to let your child know that, to educate your child at a young age. It all depends what age they are, obviously, and sometimes it can be very uncomfortable, and some parents don't want to talk about it. But it's very important to talk about it. It's very important to let your children know at the age of 4 and 5 because they pick up things. That to let them know that if someone touched you down there inappropriately or did something to you down there, let mommy, daddy know. Let someone know so the adults can take immediately action to do something about it. And you did nothing wrong. Obviously, let your children know that it's not their fault. They didn't do anything wrong. It's the people who did this is sick and wrong and should have not done that. It should not touch any child inappropriately. It's just disgusting and wrong. You're a pedophile, a pedophile. So it's good to educate your children about that and let them be aware of inappropriate things, whether it's in the home or in school, wherever the case might be, whatever situation that there be. So, like I said, I hope that the Menendez brothers be released. I hope that they enjoy their freedom because they should. Because, like I said, they spent over a decade in prison, and it's time. Now, the district attorney may feel differently. He opposed to this resentencing. He feel like the men did not change. They feel like they have not been reformed. They're still their old self. And he even said, and I didn't get his name, saying that he opposed the resentencing, claiming that the brothers recently broke some prison rules. Okay, that was when they were younger. Now it's a different story. Yes, they broke some prison rules, like trying to escape, trying to get cell phones that they shouldn't have been using. Okay, but now it's a different story now because they're different. They're men. They change, and they have helped others too while they were in prison. They have degrees. They're reforming other men that are in prison. So they've been doing good works inside the prison. It's not like they're not doing anything. So I feel like they deserve a second chance. I feel like they deserve to be free. They pay their dues, and they're apologized. They're sorry. They are regretful, remorseful, and why not? They deserve to be free, to be with their families and their friends, and enjoy whatever life they have left. They did their time. So that's how I feel about it. But let me know what you think. Do you feel like the Menendez brothers should be free, or do you feel like they should just rot in prison for the rest of their last dying days? Let me know your thoughts about this. Thank you so much for watching. That's it. I really appreciate each and one of you liking, subscribing, and sharing my videos to others. I love you guys so much for just taking the time to listen to what I have to say, because I know there's other platforms out there in the YouTube channel that more interesting than me. Hopefully I'm interesting. Hopefully you guys keep up and watch what I have to say and things that I talk about that interest you, that for you to come back. And when you do come back, I really appreciate it, and I love you guys. And I just want to say thank you so much again for watching. That's it, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.